folks. Welcome to another edition of the Ominous Tower. Some ominous music there for background. Thinking of the fireside chat for the All-Father side chat for the day, as we like to call these. I decided upon telling you of one of the darker incarnations of God while he was finding his way through the wilderness of reincarnation and karma. I'm going to title this one The Black Buddha of Bellatrix, an All-Father side chat for Nihilists. Okay, let's delve into it. Okay. Now, a lot of you probably think that Buddha, the original Buddha, was human. And I'm going to have to disappoint you on that one. In fact, the original Buddha was not even born on this planet. This solar system, or anywhere that you might have thought the Buddha came from. In fact, the Buddha came from Orion. Interesting, isn't it? Bellatrix is a constellation in Orion, which is known as the Amazon constellation. And very distinctly female entity. God was incarnated there once upon a time. And they were pretty early in his maturation, if you will. In fact, contrary to later mythology, this was not a female incarnation. This was a unisex incarnation amongst feline species. A feline species that lived in a very strange planet that had purple skies. Apparently had a purple sun, or clouds that made it come through as purple to their way of viewing, which made it a perfect way to view a planet for a species that was nocturnal. Hunting species, a very vicious species that was a pack animal. They hunted in families. Not having sex, a family sort of meant something different in those days. At any rate, they were kind of like one might imagine a black panther might look in its native surroundings. Yep. It wasn't the first time there were black panthers around in the world. Okay, and there was one of these black panthers. I'm not sure what the name was, or if, you know what, they didn't even have names in those days. They communicated telepathically. Language had not been invented yet. But they did have ideas that they bandied about through each other's minds. Those ideas were very, very simple and fundamental. They were ideas about, let's go kill that thing, grab it by its ear, you take the death thrust, let's all eat, let's go off and reproduce. They did mix their DNA in the way that they wanted to, as most unisex species do. And funny enough, mammals existed in other forms that weren't sexually reproductive or prone to breasts and breastfeeding. Well, they all had breasts, actually, and they all fed each other. and a real egalitarian society. Everyone was pretty equal, except some were more equal than others. What made you less equal in this society was being a better hunter, bringing home more bacon, as it were. And that's where your value came from. And this one cat was one of their, I don't know, alpha cats, if you will. Top of the line predator, best at taking down everything, and thus was sort of the leader, the guru of their little colony of family. Ones of these cats that knew they were related because they all kind of went back to one of these alpha leaders who tended to be the one that they chose to reproduce with, try to reproduce with. It was kind of not too egalitarian in that way either. It was like whoever I want to have unisex with, I will choose to share DNA, and the tribe will all feed this pup who is the great hope of our next season of hunting, or whatever future season of hunting doesn't involve the current leader. They were very good at planning ahead, planning for succession in this dark colony, as it were. Okay, well, this alpha predator was hunting one day and broke a paw, which was generally, tantamount to a death sentence. I mean, you didn't want to be a drag on your community, and you wanted to not have pain or suffering, and certainly you could suffer and have pain if you couldn't hunt. So, paw was broken. This cat was trying to hide it from everyone else, so as not to be a burden. Kept up for a while, managed to hide his condition under great pain and suffering, and after a while started feeling like, what is all this for? It's all pain and suffering, and I never do anything but survive. And is survival everything there is? This tribe didn't really have any concept of God. It's one of the ones that had lost all memory of God, which is what tended to happen to a lot of societies around the cosmos after God started incarnating himself and trying out various versions of the laws of reincarnation and karma, as I discuss often. Okay, so this incarnation of God didn't know he was God, didn't know there was a God, and was suffering and in a lot of pain and trying to keep up with the Jones cats on the hunt, and finally decided, you know what, this is not worth it. I know that I'm programmed to want to stay alive and to want to do my part for this community, but I've had it. And this cat had a brilliant idea. A brilliant, awful idea. Well, instead of waiting for some other cat to notice that I've gotten a little bit slow, I'm gonna go out with a bang. I'm going to announce to my family that I want them to eat me. I'm donating my body to them to eat so that they can have a feast, and I can go into the great hereafter and quit while I'm at the top. And that's what happened. They had a great feast, and this cat got to experience being eaten alive by his own family. How do I know all this? I was there. This is one of the most indelible past life memories that's ever come back to me during my spiritual awakening. And today was the day it finally all came together into a talk, which these talks do. These are how synchronicities get turned into something more meaningful. Okay, so let's tie this together to where Buddhism is now, and other sort of nihilistic cults. Nihilistic means that either it's not real or, if it is real, it's just an illusion and something could be better if I move on, which is kind of a dark view of karma. Of course, at this time, there wasn't any understanding of karma, so the thought was, I'm just going to move on and end all this pain and suffering and provide a meal on a hungry day for my family. Not very noble motivations, but made up a story that became legend among that community and was a major part of them developing into the society that they became, which is basically what I call an anti-God species, a BORG species, a species that sort of thought like a hive mind. The needs of the few were not as important as the needs of the many. It was a society of self-sacrifice, of oneness and unity. Kind of like many imagine that the perfect world of Neo-Buddhism or communism or altruistic atheism is today. And yes, these are all nihilist cults. In one thing or another, they live in a delusion of self-sacrifice when they're actually doing something for themselves, something that makes them feel good, something that gives them a virtue signaling, taking one for the team feeling about suffering and pain. While maybe they're sitting there suffering and somebody else is feeding them, trying to keep them alive so they don't leave us, Buddha, don't leave us, you need to teach us some more, please, please, please. Okay, I'll sit under this Bodhi tree and you can bring me fruits and well, I can't eat any animals anymore, that would be bad karma. But I really like those fruits that grow in the trees. It's about 100 miles away. It's no big deal. Just go over and get me some of those fruits, and if there's any left over, you can have them. Buddha. Yeah, it was kind of a dark idea. And nothing gets wasted in the multiverse. So even God's incarnation on the dark side get used. And this black cat Buddha became the pattern, the prototype for all the other cats that invented the same kind of nihilistic ideas in subsequent species that developed ever since. And because individuals develop like species, everything evolves either on an individual basis or a collective basis. This became both a popular stopping point for individuals and a popular stopping point for collections and collectives. And in fact, it was made more popular by embracing the religion that it was the only collective, it was the exclusive collective, the cosmic oneness that everyone belongs to, even if they don't want to. And this is sort of the progression of this delusion of nihilism from the individual Buddhist concept, which is, I want to disconnect from pain and suffering and go to this magical place where I don't feel pain and suffering. This nirvana. Either through meditation, I can get there by mental masturbation, by deluding myself through meditation, or I can get there by dying. After a lifetime of devoting myself to getting there, which is the collective version of Buddhism as a religion. Well, if you follow what the guru says, if you do everything that Buddha did as interpreted by Swami Blueblop, then you're going to get the version of nirvana that Swami Blueblop says is the one that you want. And there are many versions of Buddhism, just like there are many versions of Christianity. And, well, to the extent that this character that you're worshiping as Buddha, who is from a line of DNA that is tied to this line, as I told you yesterday, that's the way the Messiah pattern works. And this was one of the dark messiahs, capital M. This species existed for a while on this planet where it was evolved. It was visited by the atom of the BORG times, the BORG side, and it culminated in the last of its kind. Now, what was the last of the kind of the Buddha cats? Well, you got to fast forward past a BORG incarnation to turn this Buddha species, which was unisex, okay, they had no sex. They were very violent towards anything that they considered the other. Protecting their interests, they would defend their planets mercilessly, and were pretty effective at it because they were a hive mind. Imagine cats with a hive mind. Ferocious, man-eating or meat-eating cats as a hive, kind of like lion bees, if you will. They ended up solving a war with the dog people, which involved creating a peace treaty, which involved having sex. They gave up the ability to reproduce asexually and took on the necessity of reproducing sexually. And this is how these two species tried to solve a war that had been going on a very, very long time. It didn't solve the problem, it gave us sex. Basically, that's how the BORG side species, chosen species, end up serving the plan after all. Now, sex may seem like a pretty stupid idea when you've been reproducing asexually in a species that has no male-female differentiation. They're all alpha predators, alpha hunters, who are all capable of producing milk if they want to, so that they can feed the young one that's in the tribe. And the ones that wanted to spend time feeding would grow milk and not be able to hunt as well. And the ones that didn't want to spend time feeding would still focus on the hunt and bringing meat home. So in a way, they sort of had the male-female model of behavior without the physical differences and with a complete choice of getting which role to play. Now, I guess some people today would think that was ideal. Wow, they had it so great then. If we can only go back to that. Well, let me tell you, they had their own set of problems. That's how they ended up getting into wars. It wasn't all roses. And although this idea of sex didn't solve that war, and the battle of the sexes has gone on ever since, turns out it's been a pretty valuable thing in coming to the point we're at in creation with the human phase of the Gaia experiment. An experiment which has involved a lot of chosen species, some major, some minor, some that delineate an entire day of creation, and some that just make an interesting anecdote, side note, that explains certain religions, certain ways of thinking that still recur as a pattern, which are rather dark ways of thinking. Nihilism is a dark tunnel of philosophical thought. Why? Well, I think you can see that by making what you're doing, where you are, what you're experiencing unimportant, especially if it's painful and you think you're suffering, it encourages suicide. It encourages disconnection from what's going on around you. And it also encourages kind of a narcissistic effect on your personality. This is how a guru could be perfectly happy letting their flock do everything for them, sacrifice everything for them, die for them, because the guru is the only one who's really important. I've got to get out of Tibet, even if the whole rest of you get enslaved, because I'll carry on the message of love, light, and oneness to the whole world. Dalai Lama, 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 Rama, Lama. Okay, it's kind of making fun of them, yeah? But that's what I think of cats like that. They're jet-setting around, getting wined and dined, and getting to speak at fancy conferences, and running around on private jets. And people, oh, Dalai Lama, everything he says is so... I'm sorry, you're preaching a pole of nihilism that is very unhealthy. Tibet was so easy to take exactly because of the Buddhist government that they had. Think about it. Pacifism is not a very good ism when there's somebody that wants to take what you have and is willing to disobey all of your rules for behavior. And this is why the love, light, oneness pacifist tribe is very dangerous and is actively being promoted by international communism, which is another nihilist cult based upon a delusion that the greater good can only be achieved through the one party, the Communist Party. We know what's good for you. We know how to solve your problems. Listen to us, listen to us, listen to us. No, don't look that way or that way. There's only one party and one Politburo and one supreme leader. Whoa. I'm sorry. This is what communism is. It's what it always will be. And those who think, well, communism has never been done right. We just need to do it right this time, and we know how to do it. If our side started the revolution, we'd have perfect communism and by next election. Because we're all one. We all want the same thing. It's those horrible Republicans that don't want what we want. They're ruining everything for everybody. And on the Republican side, there's people that are Marxist in their own way, in a conservative way. It's those horrible BLMers and Antifa people and the guys with the weird hair and who want to have babies even though they don't have the equipment for it. They're the ones that need to be exterminated so we can have one perfect government. This is all what I call cult Marxism. And effectively, any religion based upon a very narrow-minded view of one God is just another reimagining of this Buddha figure. Or the nasty, horrible cat that will claw your eyes out if you say one word against what they're trying to force down everybody's throat. I guess you could say this is kind of the two poles of nihilism. And this is why some appreciation for karma is important. And this is where divine retribution is not as good an idea as karma. Because divine retribution is based upon the God'll get you for that, or God's servants will get you for that, because we're God's representatives on earth. And this is what sends many people to the Buddhists to be indoctrinated in the peaceful way to be an elitist. A lot of unhealthy things to think about. And to the extent I can, I try to be a doctor of divinity and point out the ailments, the spiritual ailments that folks may be suffering from without knowing it, and giving them a perspective, a way of thinking about them that might allow them to heal themselves. And that's essentially what this idea of omnism is. I don't negate anybody's feeling, anybody's religion, anybody's beliefs. I just, in a rather Socratic way, I think, the Monty Pythonish Socratic way, expose the weaknesses, expose the tender spots, because it's those spots which are gonna hurt you if you keep chewing the same God food. Because it's going to be cognitively dissonant to yourself, which causes disease, That's the root cause of all illness. Cognitive dissonance. Not giving your body what you know it needs because you've got a better idea than your body what is good for it. Or abdicating your choice of what to do with your body to some screaming part that says, I like this. I want more of that. Instead of thinking about the whole body and the soul that's running it and saying, what do we all need? We've got to make a compromise here, because if we let one choice, one desire dominate everything, we're probably going to starve. We're probably going to get sick. External diseases come through belief, conflicting beliefs. Basically, every human conflict that led to violent acts was a contest between two poles of cult Marxism. My country, right or wrong, is cult Marxism. My ideology, right or wrong, is cult Marxism. If you are one who says that capitalism is the be-all, end-all of everything, you're in a cult. If you're one of those that says, no, communism is the perfect way, it's the only way forward, we've got to go communist, we've got to go socialist, okay, you're in a cult. What you're saying, the ideology that you're pushing, is inconsistent with observable facts of human nature, of collections of human souls. It might be true in an ideal world where everyone was a clone of the Black Buddha, but that's not what our species is about. We're individuals. If you don't think you're an individual, you're as delusional as fuck. If you think your identity is malleable and I can be whatever I want because I'm Tinkerbell, I'm sorry. You're cognitively dissonant as fuck. You have a disease, friend. And that is not an insult. That's not an attack on your identity. That's not an infringement on your rights. That's just a simple truth. And folks that are trying to tell you that in a nice way and help you solve it without irreversible surgeries, irreversible medications, they're your friends, not your enemies. At least give them a chance before you do something that you're going to regret. Because I guarantee that everyone who chose to be male or female, it was a choice. It's a choice we get comfortable with, and my explanation for what is going on right now in the species is that, well, in fact, it's borne out by science. Other species observed in the lab, when they're put under intense stress, begin to develop homosexual tendencies. Not all of them, but some of the rats in a very stressful environment began being more likely to be homosexual, more likely to have sexual dysmorphia. This is, in fact, part of the natural selection process. When pressures are high, you can't support a large population, a species will become homosexual. Some percentage of it that will inhibit the population growth naturally. And much more naturally than creating new viruses and new vaccines. Much more naturally than starting wars that didn't need to happen. Much more naturally than causing famines that didn't need to happen. Which is something we're in the process of witnessing right now with the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. They think they know better than Mother Nature how to solve our population problem. Well, some of the things they're doing are very effective. Others are going to have unintended consequences. One of the unintended consequences that you are seeing, and you have seen if you've followed the science, the real science of coronaviruses as they evolve, as they mutate, is the interesting phenomenon of the Omicron variants, which if you know anything about the Omicron variants, you'll know that they are very contagious, but not very dangerous. In fact, the only population that they're very dangerous to are vaccinated, and some percentage of people that happen to be very sensitive to this new strain, which is, you know, another feature of the probabilistic nature of evolution. But in general, coronaviruses evolved to be more endemic and less harmful. This is how we got the common cold. This is how we got the most common flu strains. And none of those have ever killed the human species. There may have been semi-pandemics in the past, but none of note within human memory. Even the Spanish flu was not all that deadly. The Spanish flu was made more deadly by the fact that it happened before, during, and after a world war, when a lot of people were traveling around on troop ships, a lot of people were experiencing food stress, political stress, and all of these other things that contribute to making a disease worse than it would otherwise have been. It was also under a fair amount of stress because materialist science was getting started then, and there were all sorts of crazy, kooky ideas being proposed for how to cure the flu. Just like all throughout the Middle Ages, every time the bubonic plague came up, people had new crazy ideas about how to solve the bubonic plague. Until somebody actually did solve it, and it wasn't a plague anymore. And we don't have outbreaks of the bubonic plague. Occasionally somebody will get it, and it gets taken care of with known medications that work, and it's not a big deal. Well, what happens if we get in the way of that process, and we don't want the known medications to be known because we want to try out all our new experiments and new drugs? Well, this is another thing that if you've been watching the plandemic, as some people call it, closely, you will realize that yes, there were very effective treatments that were found quite early on by clinical researchers and used on their patients in whatever trial experiment they could cook up, and not all these guys had the means and the manpower and the dollars to do big trials and make a big splash in the medical world. But there were many of them that came out and they were discredited by folks who said, oh, well, don't listen to them. They're conspiracy theorists. Well, I'm here to tell you that I'm going to say a horrible word. I'm going to be crucified for it, but I'll take one for the team because I am a dark Buddha. Ivermectin. Even hydroxychloroquine was more effective than many other things that were proposed. How about this endless mask-wearing bullshit? Well, I'm here to tell you that places got through the pandemic just fine without wearing a mask. Ever. Ever. Until somebody thrust it down their throat and made them. Now, they did tell people you should distance. There is a disease going around. You wash your hands. Maintain distance. If you're vulnerable, maybe don't go out so much. Have somebody else bring your groceries or whatever if you're really worried about getting this disease. And those places handled the disease much better. Without lockdowns, without runs on toilet paper and masks and bullshit. That's still going on in China today. Why? Because it's communist. A communist ideology, a communist party that is intensely nihilistic about the lives of its people. Oh, it loves to virtue signal, but the real reason that the CCP, Xi Jinping, is still pushing the lockdowns, the extreme lockdowns, mask wearing, vaccine getting, all of these, and now they're pushing traditional Chinese medicine on it for some people. Dark stuff going on there because they're basically a cult. A version of cult Marxism that worships Xi Jinping and the Communist Party and the Han supremacist idea of everything. Anything that's Han has to be wonderful, so every snake oil cure from Chinese medicine is the Chinese vaccine is okay. This is what cults do. And a cult that lets that kind of stuff go on for 2 or 3 years instead of wising up after 1 or 2 is a worse cult than the one you're in. And these worse cults find their inspiration in Black Buddhas or the descendants thereof. So, some food for thought there. Might be controversial. You may have something to say about what I just told you. If you react to it violently, with vitriol, personal attack, total dismissal, I suspect that you may be in a cult, a Marxist cult of very dogmatic belief. So dogmatic that anybody who challenges what you believe becomes an enemy. And yes, you can make an enemy of somebody just by saying, well, they're not enlightened. They just don't see the light. They're low vibration. That's why they don't understand me. Because I am one. I am one with the universe. I am one with everything. And this little weird person that you see in front of you, that's just an illusion. I'm giving God a fun little experience to expand his universal knowledge so he can experience more things and learn more things through my insanity. Whoa, it's cool. You can see Pikachu when I hold my hand up a certain way. I was wondering why my wife put that there. I'm glad. That's kind of a cool effect. At any rate, that's the Black Buddha of Bellatrix. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Find something to counter my story, my assertion, and my theory, and then let's talk. Till then, keep following the Omnist Hour. Like, share, subscribe. And this is Rob Trump signing out with a happy karma. Take care.